Hey guys, welcome to this little look inside of Disneyland, DCA, Disneyland Resort in general. Over the last couple of years, we've gotten a lot of questions about tips, secrets related to the Disneyland Resort. In particular, because of all of our work in the convention world, when things like WonderCon come up, D23 Expo, those moments where it draws a group, particularly that maybe not as familiar with Disneyland, to the resorts. And so that being said, we spend so much time that just about everybody will ask little tricks, tips, things like that. And we do find when we go to Disneyland, any parts of the resort with friends, family that, maybe go a few times a year but don't go as regularly as we do, that there's a lot of things that they didn't know, little secrets, little things to kind of enhance the trip, so on. So what we're doing is putting together a little series of videos here. We'll see over time how these accumulate. So this is part one of a sequence. So hopefully you're starting out here. And this is going to just kind of talk about a few general things related to taking a trip to Disneyland. Now, first off, overall, with all the work that we're going to do with these videos, by no means proclaiming to know everything. We learn new things literally. I mean, just yesterday I found a couple cool things on a website I was reading, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know that, and little secrets. And policies change as well as we talk about different tips to kind of make the most of the time. So by no means am I trying to say that this is one-stop comprehensive everything. I think one of the fun things about covering the Disney theme parks, whether it's here, Orlando, wherever, is they're just ever-changing and a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, and that's kind of what brings us back all the time, because there's always new things to see. But that being said, I do think there's a lot of things we can share, and we have shared with people as we've gone over the years. So hopefully this will help in that way. As we go on, as you're watching this though, if there's things, this video, the other videos that we'll produce that you're like, well, that's incorrect or it's changed, obviously things will change over time, add them into the comments, please. And hopefully this will become kind of an archive for people as they find it a year, 2, 3 years from now, whatever. We'll be updating. But again, if you can add things to the comments on the YouTube channel, that would be great, because it kind of keeps everybody in the loop. So in this video, just want to talk about a couple general things before we get into specifics, walking around and looking in the park or parks. So first off, just as you're planning a Disneyland trip, I think the most important thing, whether you're going for a couple hours for dinner or spending a full week, is really to have a game plan. And, what type of trip will this be? For example, just yesterday I was here for about 8 hours taking my mom. My mom goes a couple times a year, maybe 6 to 8 times a year. It's very different than when Carmel and I go and we're going for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, quick dinners, quick rides, things like that. For her, I'm not sure when the next time she's going to be back. It may be a month, maybe 2 months. There's things she hasn't seen in the last few months. So it was a much different type of trip where we're going to kind of intensify the experience, get a lot more attractions. So yesterday we did about 20 attractions in about 7-8 hours. Now it was a February day, so it was slower, it wasn't crazy busy, so that was much more doable. But the strategies change from that as opposed to if her and I go in June or July. And so I think just up front, whoever's going with you, whether it's just 2 of you going or 5 of you or 10 of you, is everybody being on the same page in terms of what the trip is going to be about or what the visit's going to be about. Next up is then adjusting expectations. I think the era that we live in right now, and I'm guessing whenever you're watching this video in the future, the fact of the matter is the Disneyland Resort is super, super busy, and that's something that's very, very consistent. And so it's something that you can expect, whether it's a January rainy day or a February rainy day or middle of July, it's going to be super busy. Now, that being said, there are some nice days, and yesterday for us was one of them. And some of those rainy days definitely are better than those, summer days and things like that. But adjusting the expectations helps greatly in making sure it's an enjoyable trip. And so planning, we try to plan every time we go that it's going to be, July 4th weekend, basically, and go from there. And coming in with those expectations, it just makes the whole weekend much more enjoyable. And I think that's something, whether you're into sports, conventions, whatever, adjusting expectations always helps greatly. Next up, in terms of some general tips, make sure that you're really following along on Twitter and Facebook. I think those two sources, at least as of the recording of this video, are the best places to start in terms of getting information to help you on your Disney trips. Just on the drive over here today, I found on Twitter just out of the blue that over at the ESPN zone they are recording a Angels talk show, The Hot Stove, and so they're going to have some former Angels players there, and they're talking about off-season stuff. And it was just kind of a fun, cool thing to stop by, see some Angel players, take a couple quick pictures, and then head over here to where I'm actually shooting. This is over at the Grand Cal, and so I wouldn't have known that as familiar as I am with Disneyland. Been in the park literally over 100 times last year. If it wasn't for following along at that exact moment, a couple minutes before I pulled into the parking structure, wouldn't have known that was going on. So follow along. Disneyland Today, obviously, the official Disneyland site, but also things like mouse weight, obviously us Parks and Cons. I mean, we are in the parks all the time. So I like to think that we catch stuff before anyone else does 99% of the time. So I would think that if there's something, whether it's a tiny little thing like a ride, a change, for example, when the Haunted Mansion Hatbox Ghost thing was going on, we were the first ones to find the wall being changed, or the diamond on the track, or Grizzly Creek when they put their walls up for the redo of Condor Flats. We really try to find those things first just from being in the parks. But that being said, there's obviously a ton of other sites out there as well to follow along with it. Just have your little group of Facebook, Twitter that you follow hashtags, things like that, so that you know what's going on there. Next up, in terms of general rules, make sure to bring food and drinks. Food and drink are all fine in the Disneyland Resort, so you do go through security when you're on your way in. But again, I think whether you're going for an hour or a full day, you need to have, if you end up spending if you end up buying one $4 or $5 bottle of water, I think that's, really hurts the entire experience. We still buy our sodas, we still buy food, we eat, at the place pretty much every time we come here. We're eating lunch or dinner or something like that. But water is one way that you can really save money, and so make that a goal. When we're in the parks doing the next couple of videos, we'll go into some specifics of places that give refills, things like that. But I think that's an easy way to kind of make your trip better. And then snacks. Again, for us, we're going to eat lunch or dinner, those main meals, but maybe we'll have a granola bar with, or some chips or trail mix or whatever, just something so that if you get a little bit of the munchies, you can grab something quick and you don't have to worry about it. Not all theme parks allow all of that, but Disneyland does. So, feel free to throw your Diet Cokes, your waters, things. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily I'd be into bringing a whole ice chest, although some people do, and there's a whole picnic area and all of that. Make sure to go on the site and see all the limitations in terms of size and how much you're able to bring. But I'm more talking about, bringing a purse, bringing a backpack, and throwing some things in there. Next up, in terms of general ideas, make sure while in the park you always have a fast pass in hand if you're going to be there more than a few hours. I mean, if the goal is to ride at all, make sure to have those fast passes in hand and keep them going. So when we're going just for dinner or something, maybe we don't even plan to ride anything. It's more people watching and checking out, taking some videos, some pictures of new things. But if we want to ride anything, immediately we're going to go in, let's get our Star Tours, Fast Pass, Roger Rabbit, Space Mountain, whatever your interest is. Make sure to keep those flowing throughout the day. And remember, in the era, at least as we're recording this, also the shows, many of them will have fast passes. So things like Fantasmic, the Frozen Fairy Tale Theater, World of Color, stuff like that will have those fast passes, and those are not on the same system. So even though the Disney the ride fast pass limits you to that one per period, and on there it'll say when you can get a new fast pass, so you can have 2 at a time depending on what system you're on and time limits and all that. But ideally, so going back to yesterday, I consistently had a fast pass for myself and for my mom for a show and a ride at all times. So we were able to just kind of keep the day moving, and in those little lulls in between where our fast pass wasn't good, we would try and jump on something like Haunted Mansion or Tiki Room or any of the the Adventureland, Frontierland, whatever is in that same zone as we were waiting for Indiana Jones. Maybe we were kind of trying to jump on something else in there with that extra 10-20 minutes, and you'll have varying rates of success with that depending on how crowded it is. But again, I think as a normal policy of having those fast passes, it helps the day quite a bit. Also be aware of what rides have single rider lines, and that can alter over time, but single rider can help a lot. Something especially like Radiator Springs Racer. That being said, always check what's going on there, because there's sometimes we'll see Radiator Springs Racer and that single rider line will still have a huge line, and it might be just better to come back at a different time or just again rely on the fast pass. I think sometimes people rely too much on the single rider line at Disneyland, and it sometimes will end up taking almost an equal amount of time. Again, not always, usually it is much faster, but something to be aware of and be careful of. Looking at the parking structure real quick, Beware that often the parking structure can get backed up. There is the option of parking in Toy Story as well, or downtown will allow you 3 hours parking for free, or 5 hours with a receipt from one of the designated places. Make sure to have, if you're going to stay there, it gets expensive fast, so make sure that you're aware of where to get those receipts from and what places are not applicable. But that being said, in the structure itself, one interesting thing there is consistently, I'd say 9 out of 10 times when we're parking in the structure, they'll have the left and the right lanes open as you're going up the ramps. And I'd say 9 out of those 10 times, the left side is way more open than the right side. And for whatever reason, it's kind of the sheep thing. Everybody follows along in the right side. They don't jump into the left lane. The left lane can save 5-10 minutes with how much it gets backed up in that right lane. So be advised as you're going up the structure parking lot, look at both lanes, see if there's any cones blocking anything off. If they're not, definitely stick to the left. And then the last thing is just kind of a general overview, kind of outside the park. We're going to look more at Downtown Disney separate, and DCA and Disneyland, all that, but just some kind of general overview things. As you're entering either Park Disneyland or DCA, be very careful about their extra magic hours. Those are hours where the park opens early for hotel guests only. On those days, be careful about your planning, because let's say it opens at 9 a.m., but the extra magic hour is at 8 a.m. That means when you get in there at 9, if you're not a hotel guest, you're already an hour behind everyone else. So while it's a great gift for the hotel guest, it can really put you behind, and there can already be some big lines at some of the attractions you may want to visit. Might be better on those days to start at the opposite park. So they fluctuate back and forth between DCA and Disneyland. So I advise, if you don't have the benefit of the extra magic hour, avoid the extra magic hour in the morning if you're coming at rope drop. The other thing about that too is, notice if you are in that group that's not staying at the hotel, the booths of entry at Disneyland and DCA, they begin in the morning, let's say at 8 a.m. again, they're all extra magic hour, and then there's just the waiting room only area, and so there's all the people just going in. As the crowd dies down though, they start to convert those extra magic hour booths into regular entrance booths, and that's a good opportunity to be able, instead of waiting in the line of 200 people at the end, just kind of stand back, wait. Once they convert a booth to from extra magic hours to regular interest, jump in that line, and all of a sudden you may only be 10-15 people back, maybe even less than that, rather than being 200 people back, even though they were there a half hour or so before you. So just be smart. Disneyland is so much about working smarter, not harder, to have that enjoyable visit. And so these are just a couple things to start out our series of videos here. Again, we'll see how much this grows, how many videos we do, but we did want to start to sit down and do something with this, because we get questions all the time. We always point people to various things, like our park views is a great resource on our website. You can go to Disneyland or DCA and plan your whole trip by clicking on any of the rides, shows, shops, menus, and kind of getting a sense of what's going on at the park. So if you've not done that, that's a good way to plan. But beyond that, there's a lot of just thinking on the spot, and so hopefully these videos will help kind of bring you into the culture of the park, maybe give you a few little tips, fun secrets, things like that, just to enhance the experience. Again, I'm sure you're going to have a ton of other suggestions even at the end of this just general video. Please add them in the comments below so it helps everyone else. By no means with anything do we say that we're the one-stop, all-knowing resource. We totally acknowledge that there's a million different places to go for your information, and great resources at that. So please help us kind of build this community and add to our resources by leaving comments below and helping advise those that are coming in the future, because I think as a community we can really help lead people to some much more fun days, nights, or full-on weeks or weekends in the parks. And so we appreciate your help with that. So we'll go ahead and leave this video here. Until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.